Okay, well, good morning, ladies. I guess we have a ladies group today. My name's Miranda. I'm going to basically just be going over the nutrition portion of what we're going to be kicking off with you guys next week. So we'll go ahead and get started. This is going to be kind of the quick version. We're going to be touching on this in more detail as we kind of go through. So if you don't remember any of it, it's okay. We're going to touch on it again. So no stress. Let's go ahead and scroll. So again, my name is Miranda. I have a degree in exercise science. I've been coaching for about 5 years now. I also have a nutrition certification, a couple other things that I do with PT and all that kind of stuff. But my primary goal for what we're going to be going through in the nutrition portion of this is education. And you guys all work in education, so you get it, right? But if you think about it, number one, I believe there's a lot of misinformation in the nutrition space in general. And two, just a lack of information. You know, most of us didn't receive any sort of structured education around nutrition unless you went to school to become a registered dietitian or something like that, right? Maybe you've had a class here or there, but a lot of us are just sometimes unaware of what's going on or what we should be doing for the right things. And so we're going to focus on education first and foremost, and then also habit formation, because maybe some of you guys in this room, either yourselves or know somebody who have tried some sort of diet in the past, right? Whether it's, Whole30, keto, all those big ones out there that tend to be quick fixes or what we like to call fad diets. And that's not what we're going to be doing here at all. Even though it is like a shorter time span of 6 weeks, we're going to work in those 6 weeks on building long-term sustainable lifestyle habits, because that's where behavior is driven from, is all the habits that we do every single day, right? So either a lot of the things that we're doing right now that maybe we're not so proud of, those habits, will be working on making changes on those. Maybe we have some really good habits like drinking water, fruits, breakfast, things like that we can kind of build upon as well. So that's going to be kind of the general structure. Also, a lot of the things that we may have grown up with, I think especially as women, that we were taught about exercise, health in general, has changed. You know, how long ago has it been that fat is what you're not supposed to eat? Don't eat fat, it's going to make you fat. Or, the only way to lose weight is to get on a treadmill for an hour a day. And that's just not the case. There's better ways to go about it. Which is good. I agree.
Wants to be on the treadmill for an hour.
Exactly. So we're going to talk about all that kind of stuff. Structure-wise, how this is going to kind of play out is, you can see that machine back there. Maybe some of you have got an in-body scan. Maybe not. At some point, we're going to hopefully get that. That's going to be how we can, one data point to use to track progress moving forward. The nice thing about that is it's going to let us know our body fat percentage and our muscle mass. And those are going to be the big things that we're focusing on. Even if you don't necessarily have a goal to lose weight or build muscle, even if your goal is just to kind of come on in, learn about how to eat properly for you and your body is extremely important, because nutrition is essentially the foundation of like everything that we want to do, right? So we'll begin using those in-body scans to help us with progress. We're also going to primarily use a Facebook group. So I know not maybe everyone is on Facebook. I would encourage you, if you're okay with it, to maybe make one. I told the group yesterday, use a fake name, I don't care. Just add the group, because that's going to be where we're sharing a lot of our information. I'll put weekly homeworks in there for you guys, kind of based on what the focus for that week is going to be. I'll have a video talking specifically about the week's focus. And then I also wanted to just be a platform for you guys to be able to share with each other, share with me, things that are going well, things that we're struggling with, and throw recipes in there. I also like to put different educational resources like podcasts that I like, blogs, things that, little graphics that you can save to your phone to make things easier as we kind of go through as well. And then I'm also going to hold office hours. We can kind of chat about what would be a useful time for you guys. And if you can't make that time of office hours to, ask me questions or whatever, we can have a different section where you can just ask a question and maybe I just answer questions during the office hours and you guys can watch back on the video or whatever, because I know we all have different schedules and a lot going on, but that's kind of my goal. We're going to be mainly using that group again for education and sharing with each other. So, and then so this is going to be a 6-week structure, right? Each week we're going to have a different area of focus. So the whole time we're going to be focusing on nutrition. That's going to be something that is always in the background. But each week we're also going to touch on these 6 pillars of wellness that I've kind of come up with things that I think are extremely important, like sleep, macro and micronutrients, exercise, stress management, hydration, and lastly is supplements. So we'll touch on each of those 6 areas briefly here, and then again in more detail each week as we go through. But before I hop in, you don't have to share anything out loud, but just maybe quietly kind of reflect to yourself on why you chose to participate in this whole thing that we're bringing to you guys. Because there's something, right? And as we go through, you don't necessarily have to have all these huge goals or whatever, but if you can come back to your why of why you wanted to do this for yourself, it can be a motivator to kind of keep things rolling and hopefully continue to roll after the 6-week challenge is over as well, right? Because hopefully we'll all learn something and have things to take with us, but like I said in the beginning, it's not a quick fix, it's not a cleanse, it's not a fad diet. It's working on those long-term lifestyle habits that we're going to hopefully use forever and kind of build upon. So we'll dive into each thing here. So week 1 is going to be sleep. I think everyone can kind of already understand. You guys are laughing. Does that mean you don't get any sleep? Right. Yeah. We all know that this is something that is extremely important for our health, right? That's not news. But also, if you are in a position where you're trying to make any sort of body composition change, if you are not getting adequate sleep, it is going to be that much harder for your body to be in a position to do anything, right? Because sleep is when our body recovers from not only just the stress demands of maybe exercise, but the stress of life in general. So we'll talk a lot about sleep routine or having a bedtime routine, which is extremely important because most of you guys probably already have some sort of morning routine that you went through this morning already, right? Your alarm went off, maybe hopefully you ate breakfast at some point, showered, whatever, got in your car, drove here to work. But a lot of people don't think about doing that exact same thing for sleep. We expect to just be able to, go from watching TV or laying in bed scrolling on Instagram to be able to go right to sleep and have an awesome night of sleep. And unfortunately, that is just not the case anymore. Our bodies used to kind of use the sun rising and setting to be our circadian rhythm to sleep. And we just don't have that with modern times now. We're staying up, we're staring at screens all day long or at night as well. And that impacts sleep a lot more than we think. So biggest thing will be focusing on that bedtime routine, setting a circadian rhythm for ourselves based on our schedules and things like that. And so I always like to ask the question of when's the last time you actually woke up feeling refreshed and awesome? And most people can't really remember it. So this is going to be a big thing that we'll focus on in week 1 and obviously throughout the challenge as well. So week 2 will be kind of what you probably think of when you think of a nutrition challenge or whatever. You may have heard macros, if it fits your macros kind of thing. But macronutrients consist of carbs, proteins, and fats. And we'll talk about a lot of different approaches that we have to this. Now, I will be honest with you guys. The most efficient and quickest way to see results with body composition is going to be to weigh, measure, track, and log your food. Now, that's not realistic for everybody. That can feel like a big step, so we don't have to do that. But if that is something that you want to do, we certainly can. With that being said, maybe throughout the weekend, if you guys are somebody that would want to do that, obtain a food scale, something that you can use to weigh, measure, log your food. It really just creates great calorie awareness so that at least you know, okay, this is what's going into what I'm eating. Even if we don't even have specific macro goals, which I can of course give you guys if you want them, but sometimes it really is just bringing awareness to things that we're eating of like, oh, that was a small cookie or whatever, but actually that cookie was 300 calories, just so having that awareness can be really beneficial. But not everyone has to, or, weigh, measure, log their food. There are other things that we can kind of focus on. And even though this is going to be week 2's focus, like I said, this is going to be something that's in the background the entire time. So other approaches are going to be working on just eating whole natural foods. If all of us did that for the next 6 weeks, I bet you that you would see a change. So avoiding things that are heavily processed, packaged, and coming in wrappers that has like a long shelf life, things like that. Avoiding that and replacing it with whole natural foods, fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, kind of sticking to the outside of the grocery store type thing. I bet all of you would see a difference just in doing that alone. So things like that. Talking about balancing meals and meal timing, almost every client that I've worked with, women especially, come in under eating protein. It's just one of those things, right? Because you almost have to go out of your way to try to get adequate protein in this world that we're living in, to be honest. Because if you think of all the things that maybe are tasty that you like to eat, desserts, pizza, chips, whatever, if you're a sweet or salty person, both of those are going to be high in carbs, high in fat, and typically low in protein. So most times we actually have to go out of our way to try to get protein. And again, we'll talk about all this, but a good place for most people to start that I think is very simple is just take your body weight and try to hit 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So if we weigh 150 pounds, trying to get about 150 grams of protein per day. Is a good place to start. I always like to operate from the mindset that there's no good or bad foods. I think that we can look at it as some foods are more nutrient dense than others, but it's also working on the mindset around food because believe it or not, food is a very emotional thing for most of us. It's a habitual thing. It involves emotion, and it's something that we do multiple times a day. So we're constantly being confronted with it. Meal timing, nutrient timing, things like that as well. We could talk about meal prep, but another great place or simple place to start is making sure you're eating every 3 to 4 hours. Breakfast is a big one for a lot of people. Did everyone eat breakfast today?
I just did.
Okay. And not to pick on you, your breakfast was good, right? You had some fruit. You didn't have any protein.
Every day I have almonds.
Okay, so we have carbs and we have fats. We don't have protein, right? So I'm not trying to call you out, but that's the real world, right? That's most of us. And so we'll kind of talk about things like that and habits like that where maybe you just add in a Greek yogurt with that and you maybe put your berries with it and your nuts with it and you have a little Greek yogurt bowl and that Greek yogurt's going to give you protein. Something really small like that is a habit that we can just add into your day that you're having more protein now all of a sudden. Right, so another last thing on this that I like to talk about is food volume, which comes into play anytime that we're trying to lose weight. I think a lot of people get caught up in like thinking of this diet mentality where it's like, I'm going to be miserable and I have to suffer if I want to like be on a diet or lose weight. And that's not the case. A lot of times that can be or we can have a different mindset about it if we work on food volume. So creating meals that you're actually eating a lot of food, think of like a salad or something like that, but it's not a lot of calories. So you're still feeling full and you're still feeling satisfied because you're eating a lot of food. It's not just this sad little bite. That can be really helpful too. So we'll talk about lots of those kind of tips as well. And feel free, guys, I didn't say this in the beginning, but if you have questions, hop in, feel free to stop me. I want this to feel like a conversation as well.
What are some good examples of like protein that we can get that would be like easy to obtain?
What do you mean by easy?
Or like just the grab and go?
Yeah.
Like a grab and go for us teachers.
Yeah, grab and go. Things like Greek yogurt is a great one. And we can talk about supplements at the end. I've also done like hard-boiled egg whites. Things that you can do. A breakfast I actually really like for on the go is overnight oats, but with protein. Because you can make those the night before. It literally takes 2-3 minutes to mix it all up, put it in the fridge, and then in the morning you can grab it, eat it cold, or throw it in the microwave, and it has protein, oats, you can put berries in there. It's really great. But yeah, we can talk about a lot of like grab and go stuff. Meal prep is going to be something that'll come up, but I also am in the camp of you have to use what's going to work well for you. So if it's not realistic for you to meal prep every weekend, cool. Use the frozen section in the grocery store. Or even buy pre-cooked protein. You know, the chicken that's cut up, the steak that's already cooked, you just have to heat it up. You know, so it doesn't have to be this big hurdle to have to cook all the time, because I know maybe some of you guys have kids of your own at home and got a lot going on, so we'll talk about that kind of stuff too, or if you do meal prep, make a bunch of it, throw it in the freezer. If you make an awesome dinner, make extra, throw some in a Tupperware for lunch for the next day, you know, things like that.
I always think nuts and beans, but I noticed you didn't say that, so I'm like, maybe nuts is not a... Because nuts are... Oh yeah, I got my protein from my nuts.
It depends on the nut, of course, but nuts are primarily a fat source.
Yes, I got these girls.
But
she tried to show that she was eating.
let me try to see if I can go back to this.
No, it's just interesting because in my mind I'm like, oh, nuts are a good source of protein, and I've been thinking that way. But then when you pointed it out today, I was like, oh wait, maybe it's not as good as what I thought. So.
I mean, there's a little protein in nuts, and again, it depends on the nut. But for most of us, we probably want to try to get at minimum 20 grams of protein per meal, and you're not going to get 20 from just nuts. That much. And if you're not, honestly, if you are not going out of your way to do that, you're probably not hitting it, just because, like, and this, a lot of people fall into your boat, right? Like, you're probably trying to do the healthy thing for yourself. You're getting fruit, nuts, all those foods are healthy, you're not wrong, but you have to also go out of your way to try to hit that protein.
Yeah.
You know, so proteins are going to be mostly meats, right? But you can also think dairy products and supplements as well. It kind of just depends. Some cheeses are higher in protein. You can see there's areas here where both of these overlap, right? So there's foods that are carbs, proteins, and fats, but almost every food has some overlap, right? So if you think of things that are like proteins and fats, that's going to be like a fattier meat, like a salmon or like a ground beef or a steak. Some cheese is protein and fat, milk, depending on what milk source you have. And there's also overlap between carbs and proteins, carbs and fats. Think of like popcorn or donuts. Not that we want to be like, that is our primary source, but a lot of foods are a combination, you know. So that's a guy that I can get my
carb area.
All right.
I definitely get my daily carb. Yeah.
That was it.
That's not hard to hit the carb goal. Trust me. Okay, week 3 we're going to kind of focus on exercise. Moral back there is going to be leading you guys through Tuesday, Thursday workouts. So you'll definitely be in good hands for that. But just kind of a general focus will be, like we talked about in the beginning, we're forming habits, right? So if we can make exercise a habit, usually we're trying to shoot for about 3 times a week or so is a great place for most people to start, 2 to 3 times. Moral's got 2 of them covered for you. So if you can find something that you enjoy on the weekends or something else to kind of throw in, is going to be a great place to start. Now, the primary focus for most of what we're trying to do here is going to be actually strength work, which, like I touched on in the beginning, is maybe contrary to what we have learned initially, especially as women, of, oh no, let's actually get on the treadmill, or cardio is the answer. And the reason that it's actually not that cardio is bad, don't get me wrong on that, but what we want to do is turn our body into a calorie burning machine on its own. I always like to give the example of a car here when I talk about this. Do you want automatic or manual? And viewing your body the same way. So do we want to go out every single day and have to make our body manually burn those calories through things like, you know, walking, running, exercising, which we're still going to exercise, but do we want to also have an avenue where our body is burning them on automatic? And the only way to do that is to have muscle mass. the more muscle we have on our body, the more calories our body burns at rest on its own without us having to do anything at all, right? So if I'm standing here and there's somebody next to me and I have a lot more muscle mass than they do, us both just hanging out, I'm going to burn a lot more calories than the person next to me just because I have muscle. So that's kind of what we're focusing on with the strength work. Teaches it on its own. But I think another great place to start for most people is just getting more movement in your day. And an easy way to do that is to attach it to something that you're already doing. So maybe lunch will be a little bit tricky because you guys are doing that here, but I like to tell people to attach even a 5 to 10 minute walk to their 3 meals a day. If you do that, that's already 30 minutes of movement in your day right there. Depending if you're able to kind of do that before and after meals.
Or teach kindergarten. Yes. Or pre-K.
Or run around. There you go.
Because he's running around all day.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Or have a baby, yeah.
I mean, most people in their occupation are sitting at a desk for multiple hours. And so sometimes just getting in movement can be a big game changer as well. But we'll talk about that as well a little bit more in week 3. Week 4, you guys are probably going to laugh at this one as well. Stress management. So I think everyone also knows like the impact of chronic stress over time to the body. But we have to think too, our bodies are really smart and they adapt to whatever stimulus that we bring about to them. So if we have too much stress, you have to think about it as what is considered a stress on the body. So if throughout this, maybe you guys decide you want to log food, we put you in a calorie deficit in order to be in a position to lose weight, that's a stress on the body. If you guys are coming to the classes that Moral is going to be teaching, workouts are stress on the body. If you're in a position where you guys all laughed at the sleep thing, you're not getting great sleep, that's a stress on the body. And then, of course, any other stresses that we may have with work or family or just life in general puts the body in this constant stress state, which has detrimental health effects over time, right? So it is really important to address this. I know that a lot of the stuff surrounding this is a little bit woo-woo or seems cliche at times, but it actually is like a serious thing. And so we'll talk about different stressors, different ways to kind of manage stress. I think that one thing that goes overlooked easily a lot of times is being mindful of things that we're consuming, and not just talking about what we're consuming as we're eating, but what you're consuming on a daily basis. What are you watching? What are you listening to? What are you paying attention to on social media? All those kind of things become really important as well. And then just breathing or getting oxygen to the brain can be really helpful with reducing stress and increasing dopamine and happy hormones in your brain. And so I know sometimes for me, I'm like, did I take a single deep breath at all today? No. And so kind of building some of those practices into your day, talking about managing schedules, building in non-negotiables for yourself. I think actually both my parents were teachers as well. And so I know that a lot of people that are teachers tend to be really great at taking care of others, right? You guys deal with kids all day. You probably take care of them really, really well. But then we put ourselves on the back burner, right? And so making sure that you're creating a schedule for yourself, that you also have time where you're taking care of you, not just everyone else's kids or kids of your own or whatever, but yourself, and building in non-negotiables of, okay, I'm going to have this exercise slot for myself in my schedule, or I'm going to make time to meal prep because it's important to me, and all different kind of things like that. Unplugging from technology is also a big one, I think, but that'll be stress management week. 5th week is going to be hydration, but also liquid calories. I think this is where people can kind of fall into a little bit of a trap. And this is where we go back to awareness, where sometimes even just logging or being more aware of liquid calories can be really helpful. Thinking things like coffee, Starbucks is a big one. Depending on what you get at Starbucks, you could be looking at upwards of 500 calories for just a coffee beverage, right? Which, if you're thinking about it, they say a 2,000 calorie diet. Of course, all of us are individuals. We're not all going to be at 2,000 calories. But if you think about that, that's, a fourth of what we're talking about meal-wise. And when we're talking about meal volume and things, a 500 calorie drink is not going to keep you full, satiated, and satisfied as compared to a 500 calorie meal, right? So even if we're just creating
hit dismiss, sorry.
dismiss. Oh, that's good. Boom. Even if we're just creating more awareness around things like that. Soda is also a big one. Alcohol is a big one. Not that I'm going to tell you guys like, hey, give up alcohol for the next 6 weeks, but working on
Because that ain't happening.
right?
We're teachers.
What happened to the stress management part?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. But so we'll talk about that, and also talking about water. Again, even if we just did one thing throughout this challenge of eating whole natural foods and trying to get half a gallon to a gallon of water a day, I bet all of you guys would see changes. A lot of times whenever we hit that 2 p.m., 3 p.m. crash or whatever, it's not necessarily that we don't have enough caffeine. It could be just that you're dehydrated and your body is misinterpreting that signal. And so if you stay hydrated, it's going to help with your energy levels. It's also going to get you up and moving more because you're going to the bathroom a lot, especially if you drink a gallon of water. And so we can also talk about maybe tracking water, again, bringing awareness to that of how much you guys are currently eating. Seems like most of you guys all have bottles here, which is good. But you can figure out too, like, okay, for you, how many of those bottles a day, if you bring that around with you a day, do you need to drink for you yourself? And that can just be kind of a big change and helper right there too. So, and flavor enhancements. I know a lot of people say water is boring or whatever, but there's ways to make it more exciting.
That's a question that I have.
Yeah.
So, first of all, how much water should we be drinking a day?
It's going to depend on the person, but a great place to start is if you take your body weight, cut it in half, and then add 50 ounces on top of that for any sort of like exercise. You can also add another 50 if, you know, we live in Houston. If it's like hot and sweaty, obviously not right now, but if you're in like a hot climate. But that's usually a good place to start. So cut your body weight in half, add 50 to it, and start there.
And then for like flavor enhancements, like should they just be like sugar-free or like should they be like natural products? Like how should all that work?
What I like to use is, it's something called Mio. It's like a flavor enhancement. It's 0 calories. You can also do like a Crystal Light. I mean, you want to keep an eye on sugar, but sugar is actually one of those things out there that I believe is demonized a lot. I mean, you don't want to be consuming a lot of added sugar, but if you're doing what we talked about in the beginning, where you're eating whole natural foods, you're already going to be eliminating that issue in general.
What do you think about erythritol? Like drinks that replace sugar with erythritol?
Oh, erythritol. I thought you were talking about R. Sugar substitutes in general, I think, are fine. There's different research on that. I think again, it's going to kind of depend on the person, but it's usually fine. Like for me, for example, I like to use stevia. It's more of like a natural one. A natural sugar substitute can be better than like something like that. It's more so too looking at like ingredient labels. A lot of times when there's like weird things in there that you can't necessarily pronounce doesn't always mean that we want to consume it. Things like, you know, yellow number, whatever, blue number, whatever. Of course, we don't want to do that. But erythritol usually is okay for most people. Other questions on that? Okay. The final week is going to be supplements. I always put this last on purpose because in a perfect world, we're already eating an amazing, healthy diet that we don't have to supplement anything at all, and we're all perfect, right? But that's not the case. And supplements can enhance athletic performance and improve overall health, kind of just depending. Now, most people would need to have a blood panel or have blood work done to know specifically for you exactly what you would need to supplement. But of course, that's going to change over time. You know, levels change, hormone levels change over time. But there are a couple things that I have recommendations for the general population that typically work well and don't really have any negative side effects if you start taking them without blood work. So the first one is vitamin D. Almost everyone is deficient in vitamin D, and even if you feel like you get a lot of sunlight, there's actually a gene SNP that it is possible to have where you're not able to absorb sunlight, actually, for vitamin D. So you wouldn't know that unless you took a genomic test. But most people are deficient, so it can be beneficial to supplement with that because that's a big one. Magnesium, I like to recommend that, especially for women, just because of our hormone profile. But it also can help with recovery when we're talking about exercise. Fish oil, anti-inflammatory benefits coming with that one. Also omega-3 and 6 fatty acids, just kind of depending on your diet. If you eat a lot of fish, you're probably fine in that. But if you don't, it could be beneficial to supplement that one. Creatine, especially or specifically creatine monohydrate, is one of the most researched supplements ever, and it is extremely beneficial for general health. It actually has brain benefits, but also, again, if you're trying to build muscle mass, that's going to help with recovery. Creatine is something that's actually naturally found in meat products as it is, but most people can benefit from 5 grams a day with that. Melatonin is next on the list, which we'll address during the sleep week, but this is, again, something that your body produces naturally. It is what makes you tired. And so if part of your bedtime routine, you want to supplement with melatonin about an hour before you want to try to go to sleep, it can be helpful to kind of start calming down the system, make you a little bit sleepy. And it is, I know a lot of people have controversy about this one, but there has been no studies to show that it does make you groggy in the morning. So you just have to make sure that you're getting an appropriate amount, which we'll talk about as well. Protein powder can be really helpful when we're trying to get those extra 20 to 30 grams. Like I said, you can kind of mix it in with those overnight oats, things like that. I mix some with yogurt as well. Or it's great for travel. Anytime that you're moving or going on vacation or something, it can be an easy thing to bring. Protein bars as well. You just have to make sure that either in a protein powder or a bar, that protein is the highest listed ingredient. Because if you flip over most protein bars and you actually look at the label, I guarantee you 90% of them actually have more carbs than they have protein. If you look at the grams, it'll be like, oh, it's 30 grams of carbs and 10 grams of protein. That's why, and we'll talk about this too with nutrition, labels are so important because you can't just look at the front. A lot of that is a marketing scheme. It says high protein, you flip it over, it has 10 grams. 10 grams is not high protein. Digestive enzymes, probiotics, and honestly the biggest thing with supplements is just making sure that they are third-party tested. So I will give you guys a resource to use to check things. But unfortunately, the supplement industry is not regulated very well, and they can put random things in there. There's been rat poison found in supplements in the past. And so you have to be careful whenever we're talking about supplements. So we'll make sure to address that as well. But that's going to be kind of the gist of the challenge. Each week we'll have a different focus, all those 6 areas I just touched on. Each week we'll have a homework for you guys. Based on that, it's mostly going to be setting a goal surrounding something within there. And then again, in the background, we'll kind of have that nutrition thing. We're rocking and rolling. I'll have like some boundaries for you guys of like, here's things we're doing the entire time, and here's things we're focusing on each week. Again, primarily through that Facebook group will be how we'll communicate. But Moral will share my email with you guys as well, so you'll have that. And feel free, please ask questions. I've been doing this for a while. There's nothing to me that is really TMI. I've probably heard it all before or been there myself. So I'd rather have you guys share with me and ask me than not. That's just kind of how I like to operate. So, and I hope it's just a platform for all of you guys to communicate as well. Like, hey, I'm really struggling with this. Is anyone else? And I guarantee you probably someone else is too. Or, hey, I had this awesome win this week. Like, let us celebrate with you too. So, do I have any questions or general thoughts right now? Yeah.
Protein, does it contain caffeine?
No. Most sources, no. I'm trying to think of anything right now off the top of my head. Some people like to add protein to their coffee. Like collagen protein powder, or there's actually, if you guys have heard of Fairlife, they make like those protein shake milks. I've had people that have used that as coffee creamer before, just to add protein to coffee. But no, I don't, there's no like sources I can think of that are protein with caffeine. Caffeine during sleep too. What?
And how much melatonin? Because I heard people say like 1 to 3 grams.
It's milligram. It would probably be milligrams. It's usually like 2 to 5.
3 grams. That would be a lot.
It would be that
Go to sleep for a day.
2 to 5. Anytime you're doing anything that's like either melatonin or a multivitamin, things like that, make sure you're not getting a gummy, because whenever they make gummies, they process them all together, like imagine like a big mixing bowl, and then they don't weigh out each individual gummy of how much is actually in that gummy. So you don't know how much you're actually getting in each one of those.
Tricky.
So you can get a pill, or my favorite version of melatonin is sublingual, the one that just dissolves under your tongue. On Amazon, they have anywhere from like 2 to 5 milligrams.
Yeah, we'll figure out the whole Facebook group thing. So whether that's, we can send out a link and y'all can kind of follow it from there. If you don't have Facebook, we can figure out something else as well, a way to kind of distribute, because it's going to be weekly videos, right? Yeah. So some video content, some other things we're going to put out there to try and hit all these topics. Again, I'm going to be around 2 times a week. Miranda's going to be available via those office hours, and feel free to contact us at any other time too.
Red wine is healthy, guys. From what I've heard.
Well, I think antioxidants in that, so.
Well, I'm excited.
Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
And if I think most people here have already signed up for tomorrow, I'm going to be back with the body scan